Welcome to the club! Hello everyone! Today we continue discussing the book Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and today we're going to discuss chapters from 8 till 14. Let's start with the overall impressions. What do you think about this part?
I'm proud of myself that I read it because I wanted to give up at some point, just because again I do not really have time. Well, I have some free time, but I want to do something that I really like. But I need to read this book. I wanted to give up, but I read it.
And I see some things in the middle, because in the beginning there were no such things.
You can see them, but it doesn't mean that...
It doesn't mean anything?
No, it doesn't mean that it's something good. So it's just some phrases or maybe some moments that I didn't understand.
Okay, as for me, I start to like the story more, because now I start to see how all the things are connected there. And I have some ideas that I would like to discuss a little bit later. I think I'm going to start the summary today, and you're going to continue. Worried for Letty, Sophie convinces Michael to take her to Mrs. Fairfax's house in Upper Folding to warn Letty. They take 7-league boots, hoping to get there before Howl. But Letty is already there with Howl and looks very much in love when they arrive. Michael helps Mrs. Fairfax with a dog, which she says keeps trying to bite Howl. That day, Michael asks Sophie for help with a spell that seems impossible to complete. They try to catch a falling star, but fail. Howl then takes them to Wales to visit his sister Megan. The spell is actually her son Neil's English homework, and the spell Michael was supposed to work on is now with Neil's English teacher, Miss Angorian. Miss Angorian turns out to be young and beautiful, and she reads what turns out to be a poem by John Donne. Howl flirts with her, and when he returns to the castle, he reveals to Sophie that the witch put a spell on him. Now they are just waiting for the impossible things in the poem to happen.
King wants to appoint Howl royal magician. Howl takes Sophie to King to blacken his name. First, he takes Sophie to visit his old tutor, Mrs. Penstamen, to practice speaking to a powerful person. Mrs. Penstamen says that Sophie has the magical power to talk life into things. She also tells Sophie to break Howl's contract with Calcifer. Sophie visits the king. She is unsuccessful. The king appoints Howl royal magician, asks him to find Prince Justin. As Sophie tries to find her way back to the moving castle, she runs into the witch, who's just come from killing Miss Penstamen. Howl is upset about Miss Penstamen. Howl is also spending a lot of time in Wales, courting Miss Angorian. And spending so much time in the rain gives him an awful cold. He still insists on going to the funeral. While Howl is sleeping, someone knocks at the castle door and a greyhound enters. It turns into a man, says Letty sent him to watch over Sophie, and turns into an Irish setter.
Yes, let's start with what happens in chapter 8. When actually the scarecrow appears again, and Howl sees that the scarecrow appeared and that it's true what Sophie had told him before, and he puts some kind of a spell to make the scarecrow go away or not to be able to reach the castle. Who do you think is this scarecrow, and why does it want to get into the castle?
I have no idea. I have no idea about half of the things going on there, really. I do not understand. I do not understand what they are doing, why they are going from people to other people. So what's the point of everything? So I have no ideas, really.
In this part, we kind of like find out about the origin of Howl, don't you think?
Not really.
So when he takes Sophie and Michael to the door, when the doorknob is with this black latch down, we are introduced to just a piece of real world, so to say. So Wales, because his sister lives there, we understand that originally Howl is from our world, in fact. What do you think about it?
I have nothing to say because really I do not know. I do not understand if things are real there or like fantasy world, because it's all connected and it's not clear from the story to my mind.
Okay.
For me, it's not clear.
For me, I think it's kind of like the story, like for example in the Chronicles of Narnia, that at some point Howl found a door that led him in this world that we are reading about now, like this land of Ingari. And there he could become a wizard. Also, what is interesting that we are finding out is that this Miss Angorian is engaged to Ben Suleiman. This is the wizard who is missing, and he was the royal magician before the king wanted to appoint Howl royal magician. I think previously Howl didn't want to look for Suleiman because he was kidnapped by the Witch of the Waste. And now we also find out that the Witch of the Waste also put some kind of a spell on Howl, but we are not like sure what kind of a spell and what is going to happen. Howl says that it's somehow connected with this strange poem. Frankly speaking, I don't understand the poem. I tried to read it even in Russian, but still didn't get a thing. What's going to happen, why it's going to happen, and so on and so forth. But now I think Howl doesn't want to look for Wizard Suleiman even more because he likes Miss Angorian. He wants like her to forget about him, but still, if Miss Angorian says that her fiancé like got missing several years ago and she's still waiting for him, I think she's very loyal and faithful, and she's going to continue to wait for her fiancé anyways, because I think there is no proof that, for example, he died or something like that. So also we now know a little bit more about the Witch of the Waste, that she mentions that she lives in the Waste because the father of the king sent her father to the Waste at some point. And now she lives there. And it's some kind of like explaining why the witch is always angry with everyone. What kind of a spell could a witch put on Howl? So we know that at some point Howl was courting the witch. And at some point maybe she fell in love with him and Howl lost the interest and left her. And of course the witch got angry, and she is not a usual girl. She just put some kind of a spell. What can the spell be? What do you think?
I don't really know.
Also, what I found a little bit funny, Howl said that the witch made some kind of a spell and he has to visit her when he's 10,000 days old. I calculated, and 10,000 days old is about 27 and something like that years. And the funny thing is that when Mrs. Penstemon asks Sophie how old she is, she says that she's 19 years old. And if Howl is 27, it's kind of a little bit strange that she's his mother, like because 90 minus 27, it's still like 73.
Looking at Howl as a character, I do not really perceive him as a grown-up, like, because he is like a teenager, really.
We don't know how long it's been that Howl is in this world. How long has it been since he came? Yes, but I think it happened maybe somewhere when he was at the university or somewhere just right after it. So I don't think it's kind of like a little too long. Maybe because he found this world and he understood that he can be whatever he wants. And I think many people want to stay playful and youthful. Just remember the story of Peter Pan, who also wanted to be the boy for the rest of his life. I think it's kind of like the same situation here. But still, I have an extract when Sophie visits the king And when the king asks her to tell him more about Howl, but tell me more please about the wizard. More about Howl? Sophie thought desperately. I have to blacken his name. Her mind was such a blank that for a second it actually seemed to her that Howl had no faults at all. How stupid. Well, he's fickle, careless, selfish and hysterical, she said. Half the time I think he doesn't care what happens to anyone as long as he's all right. But then I find out how awfully kind he's been to someone. Then I think he's kind just when it suits him. Only then I find out he undercharges poor people. I don't know, Your Majesty. He's a mess. I think this is a very precise description of Howl's character, but still I like this part when at some point she didn't even remember any of his faults, and also I like when she says that, but then I find out how awfully kind he's been to someone, and that's, I think, what I like about characters, that there are layers on layers on layers. This way, such characters are felt more real to me, because in real life also, even when people are good, they make mistakes, they have tantrums sometimes, they have breakdowns, and sometimes they do something that not very good, or maybe because it suits them, and all of the stuff. Anything to add?
No, I just like the phrase that Howl has no faults. He's fickle, careless and hysterical. No faults at all.
When Sophie goes to Mrs. Penstemon, she tells her that Sophie is a witch, in fact. Now we kind of maybe understand a little bit more why the Witch of the Waste cursed her. Because she also saw that Sophie is a witch, and maybe a very powerful one. Why do you think the Witch of the Waste killed Mrs. Penstemon?
Maybe she wanted to do something bad, like to hurt Howl's feelings somehow. I do not know again
I
why.
agree on this point.
Just because we do not know anything about this witch. We do not really know the story of Howl. We know that she was his teacher, and he kind of respected her and maybe loved her in some way, but no details. That's why it's difficult to tell how close they were. So
I think that they were close as a teacher and a pupil. And also I think Howl had a great respect for her, because with the help of her he could become a wizard. And I agree that the witch killed Mrs. Penstemon to hurt Howl, and also because the time when he has to come back to her is kind of near. This event is going to add to emotional pressure. There are two people missing, Prince Justin and the wizard Solomon. The king wants to find them. He also mentions that, for example, he needs to find Prince Justin, who is his brother, because he is a good commander, and several other countries are on the verge of declaring a war to the land of Ingrid. That's why he needs to find Prince Justin. So we remember that there is Prince Justin and Ben Solomon who are missing, and most probably they are missing because they were kidnapped by the Witch of the Waste, and we know that the Witch of the Waste likes to transform people into something. And let's now remember about two particular characters that we don't know anything about: the Scarecrow and the dog man. Don't you think that Prince Justin and Ben Solomon are those two characters?
Why not?
And who is who?
Prince is the dog. Just because I saw it in the 10th kingdom that Prince is a dog.
Okay.
100%.
And Ben Solomon is the Scarecrow.
Yes.
I, frankly speaking, I also think this way. But also, if the prince is the dog, it means most probably that he is in love with Letty. It's kind of like interesting how it happened that he fell in love with Letty. Was it like before he was turned into dog, or just when he was already in the shape of the dog? So I see those connections right now, and I'm very interested to find out what is going to happen, how it's everything is going to end up, and next time we're going to find it out. And I'm also planning to rewatch the anime when we are going to discuss the last part. Anything else to add on this part? No. Okay, let's move to the vocabulary. Will you start, please?
Okay, so I think that language here is not very difficult, and when I read, I do not really need to use the dictionary because I don't know some of the words, and that's okay, but you can really easily get it from the context, so
yes.
You do not need to take a dictionary and just look the words up. So the first phrase I have is get your bearings. It means to find out where you are. So it was said about Sofia. She opened the door and climbed out. Calcifer obligingly stopped the castle that while she did. Sophie landed in the heather and took a look around to get her bearings.
My first phrase is going to be to cast a shoe. You all know that we can cast a spell, but also I found interesting about the phrase to cast a shoe. It means to throw off or loose a shoe, said of a horse or ox. Port heaven door, Calcifer said, flickering a purple green at her. That should be all right then. Sophie hobbled over and opened it, blew down. There was a cart horse outside. The young fellow of 50 who was leading it wondered if Mrs. Witch had something which might stop it casting shoes all the time.
Take the plunge. Take the plunge to do something important or difficult, especially after thinking about it for a long time. Sophie took the plunge. Mrs. Fairfax, wasn't it my niece Martha who was supposed to come to you?
My next is going to be a word, ventriloquist, and it means a person, especially an entertainer, who can make their voice appear to come from somewhere else, typically a dummy of a person or animal. In between bursts of foreign chatter, Howl managed to say, as if he were a ventriloquist, "This is my niece Mary and my sister Megan Perry. Megan, this is Michael Fisher and Sophie Hatter," said Sophie.
Okay, next word, fickle. Someone who is fickle often changes their opinion about things. I feel bad about spying on Howl, he announced as he pounded a third set of ingredients to death in a bowl. He may be fickle to females, but he's been awfully good to me. So you read this passage, this abstract, but yes, I didn't know this word.
Okay, my next phrase is make it worth one's while. It means to pay someone money or give them some other advantage in order to persuade them to do something, and it was said by the king. All she could think of to say was, only a coward would send his old mother along to plead for him. You can see what he's like just from that, Your Majesty. It is an unusual step, the king said gravely, but I told him that I'd make it worth his while if he agreed.
The next phrase, come unstuck, to experience difficulties and fail. Sophie had her mouth open to say that this was a very good idea when one of the stars came unstuck from the firmament and darted in a white streak down the sky.
Okay, my next phrase is glib tongue. It means that the speaker is nonchalant or does not seem to take things seriously or artfully persuasive in speech. My impression, said the king, was that Howl is an unprincipled, slippery rogue with a glib tongue and a clever mind. Would you agree?
I would. Finery, beautiful clothing and jewelry worn on a special occasion. When you've quite finished nosing, Howl called. His grey and scarlet finery was all misted with drizzle.
Okay, next phrase, last resort. The only choice that remains after all others have been tried. Sophie nodded. She wished she could have remembered all Howl's delicate remarks. The king would have understood them even if she did not. Not the act of a vain man, the king said. But no one would do that except as a last resort, which shows me that Wizard Howl will do what I want if I make it clear to him that his last resort has failed.
An adjective, koi, intentionally keeping something secret. Yes, but I need to know what the terms of it are. Sophie said, did Howl tell you I was a witch? Because if he did, he didn't. There is no need to be coy. You can rely on my experience to know these things, said Mrs. Van Stemmen.
Okay, and I would like to mention this funny phrase. Well, for me, I found it funny. So, you have our leave to go now. The king says it at the end of the meeting with Sophie, and I found out that in this case, leave it's a noun. So we all know, for example, that in sick leave it's some kind of a vacation, but in this case, leave it's a permission to do something. The phrase was used in Tell Wizard Howl, Mrs. Pendragon, that I am appointing him Royal Wizard as from now, with our royal command to find Prince Justin, alive or dead, before the year is out. You have our leave to go now. So it's kind of like an official phrase of a monarch, of a king, when the meeting is over and he permits the person to leave now. So you have our leave to go now.
Okay, and one more phrase I have, hither and thither. So it means in many directions. There was a minute or so of helter-skelter chase in which the dog ran hither and thither, or whining in a disturbed way.
And I think the last one is going to be the word nuisance. I don't know why, I always forget the meaning of it. And the meaning is something or someone that annoys you or causes trouble for you. It was a nuisance that he was going to Upper Folding as well, but she would walk so much more slowly that she would arrive around the time he started back. Okay, so that's it for the vocabulary. Okay, I hope next time when we've read the book till the end, everything is going to be clearer and more understandable. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. We are going to end discussing this book next time, so please join us and live long, and
you have our leave to go now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye. Mrs. Van Stemmen,
Yes.
And asks him to find Prince Justin.
Justin, yes. Her жених. Все. Все, у меня все слова вылетают. Преданный. Loyal.
For someone, it is really what?
Really what? Heartbreaking.
It's very difficult to overcome.
Come on, Olga. Make, okay, господи, все, как это сказать? Предположи.
Suggestions. No suggestions.
Come on, try a little bit.
I can't do it. But this time hasn't passed. Has it? I don't know. I don't understand.
I just want to discuss it, to ponder about it a little bit.
So, I do not know. She doesn't know. So how can I know? I do not really have the quotes with them. Just the words. Давай дальше пойдем. His grey and scarlet. А где начало фразы? Ну ладно.
Помогите мне. Отпуск. Vacation. I'm appointing him royal wizard as from now. Окей, еще раз. Then she would arrive. Okay. I hope everything is going to.
No, don't open the door.
Okay. And for now, я предлагаю вот эту как раз фразу использовать. And for now. И давай. And thanks for watching and live long.
And я забыла. You have our leave to go now.
Да, окей.
You have our leave to go now.
Okay. So and live long.
And you have a leave. Блин, our leave. Что
Our. Да, вы типа.
You have our
У
leave.
вас есть наше разрешение пойти туда куда-то, куда ходить.